Hey humans, it's Hannah. Welcome back to the second channel. Thank you for your patience. I know we took a little break for the holidays there. Things got really crazy, but we're back. It's January. Happy New Year. Happy 2025. So this is the second channel. This is the sister channel to Hannah TheHorrible. And this is the channel where I read your personal scary stories. All my subscribers send me their own personal scary stories. They can be paranormal in nature, but they can also just be scary. Near-death experiences, something creepy that happened to them. Paranormal's great as well. It just has to have a dark theme to it. That's the only rule. And if you want to send in your own story, if you have your own story you'd like to tell that you'd like me to potentially read on this channel, instructions for how to do that are in the description right below this video. But before we get into the stories today, I am very excited to announce that we actually got our first brand support on this channel. So this video is actually sponsored, and the first brand to support this channel is Factor. It's 2025, and that means that it is time to make your life a little bit healthier while also making it a lot easier. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen, chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals right to your door. Just a couple minutes in the microwave and you get to enjoy a hot meal that you chose from their weekly menu without any grocery shopping, without any prep, without any cleanup. It's amazing. I always get the chef's choice plan. I love a good variety. However, if you have a certain lifestyle, they can accommodate that too. So they have keto plans, they have vegan or vegetarian plans. They also have a calorie smart or protein plus plan. They also have a ton of add-on options every week that are really fun to look through, including breakfast options, small little on-the-go snacky snacks, shakes, juices, and so much more. Today, I am having their chicken Alfredo pasta with garlicky broccoli, and this is one of my favorite meals from Factor. I love anything Alfredo or cream based, to be fair, but this one from Factor was so good. I've said it before, but I love how Factor gets their chicken to stay moist and tender even though it's been reheated. I don't know how they do it, but it just definitely doesn't feel like you're actually eating a microwaved meal, which is so nice. I can't stop thinking about how when I had an office job, how much I would have jumped on Factor if it was around back then, because that would have been the solution to all of my lunch problems. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50THS to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50THS at factor75.com for 50% off plus free shipping. Thank you again so much to Factor for sponsoring a portion of today's video. Now let's get into these stories. All right, enough chit chat. Let's get right into it. This first story is from Toby. This one starts, "Hello, Hannah. I'm Toby and watched your latest video, the tulpa one, and was more than thrilled to see your request for personal stories at the end because I have a doozy." So yes, I just made a video about tulpas on my main channel, a much more in-depth video than my first one 4 years ago. And I did ask for tulpa stories in that video, and I got a few, and I'm really excited about it. So I'm not going to read them all in one video, but I will sprinkle them into the next few videos for ones that I got. So okay, let's start with Toby's story. "I was 10, maybe 11 when I got my first ever laptop. It was a sturdy beast, old and with a fan that sounded like a jet engine, but it was my first ever foray into the unadulterated free internet. It was also an escape from life. In England, we start high school at around 11 years old." What? I didn't know that. "And I was, for lack of a kinder way to put it, mercilessly bullied for my entire 5 years there. I had some friends, but they always kept an amount of distance between us. Nowadays, I realize that this was all thanks to my autism, making me notably other, as well as an abnormality in how I walked thanks to a disability that would be diagnosed around this time." Kids are so mean. I'm so sorry that you went through that, because like, it's so weird to me that bullying is so alive and well. I was definitely not the most perfect kid. I was never a bully, and I was never bullied. I was mostly just lonely. Like, people mostly just left me alone. I didn't have a ton of friends. I had a very small group of friends, which I was really grateful for, but I was thankfully never like relentlessly bullied. But it's just wild to me that my mom from a very young age had lots of talks with me about like do not pick on other people just because they're different. Like, do not join in on that. And I think I did it 1 or 2 times just from peer pressure. And this was like elementary school, not high school. And even that, I felt absolutely terrible. I remember feeling so guilty about even like not saying anything or even just like slightly agreeing with the bullies or participating in it whatsoever. And it just blows my mind that there's kids out there that just go to school and like their parents never have talks about it with them. Okay, sorry everybody, I'm moving the stories over here for technical reasons. Okay. All that context out of the way, it's safe to say that I felt lonely at the time and filled that with hours of scrolling online instead of going and playing with the neighbors anymore. Thanks to this, I got deep enough into the odd side of forums to find tulpamancy, and let me say I was fascinated. I spent hours reading about it, all the warnings, all of the things to think about. I must have spent 2 or 3 months considering it before I even agreed with myself to try. The issue being that no matter how often you say to someone, think it over, plan it out, or you'll regret it, kids think they know better and also hate waiting. I should have waited until I was mature, until my adolescence and juvenile view of the world had passed before doing something like this. But I didn't. And worse yet, I decided to make 3. You made 3 tulpas? Oh no. I made 3 guys, one 21-ish called Tobias, which would later become my own name when I figured out that I was transgender, one 25-ish called Jackson, and one 35-ish who didn't have a name. That's so interesting that you made them all like full-grown adults rather than like kids your age. That's so interesting. I and the other 2 would just kind of go, hey, you, whenever his attention was required, referring to the 35-year-ish old tulpa without a name. I'm going to call him T, J, and Nix, meaning nothing, to make things simpler to read. Now, my aim back then was to have T come out of formation as an older brother figure, supportive, sweet, protective in a way. J, I wanted to be like almost a social guide because, you know, autism. I needed a lot of help in that department, and I think I wanted Nil to be paternal and mature. Basically, I wanted a brother, a friend, and a dad because my dad did and still does work away during weekdays, so I didn't often have a father figure at home with me besides the weekends. They're still with me, though they have evolved. None of them came out right, unsurprisingly. T is brotherly, I suppose, but came out less supportive, sweet, protective, and gentle brotherly, and more like volatile, aggressive, and incredibly rude to or about anyone but me. He also speaks in short, sharp sentences and has probably never surpassed 2 to 5 words of communication. Go now, you're late. Sit down, shut up, buy tickets now, selling out. He looks decently normal, just a scrawny tall guy in black cargo pants with a Swiss Army knife keychained onto a belt loop and a turtleneck with thick brown hair in a mullet, but concerningly pale. Jay is not socially adept. In the end, something formed in your own brain can only know as much as you did upon creating it, I guess. So his advice was entirely redundant and often actively damaging. There's also a near decade-long bit of his answer to any social miscommunication being, just punch him. Which has always been a joke and unfortunately is still not funny. I want to find stand-up comedy lessons specifically for this man. He also looks decently normal, black, short hair, shorter than the average, wears black slacks and a black button-up, but he leaves the 2 top buttons undone. He speaks perfectly fine, quite well spoken actually. Nil is dubiously human. I don't really remember exactly how this happened, but I know I rushed him like badly. He's just like jet black, pupilless eyes and goopy. It's like he's made of tar. I haven't done it, but Jay has physically reached into him and pulled back with a black hand and a full fist of thick, inky goo. Nil is also fine at speaking, though it's not verbal. It's just like projected from his general area, but his personality came out exactly as desired, bafflingly. He's a great father figure. Imagine crying after a breakup and the big ominous goop guy you made is like, there, you're fine, lol. That's so creepy. So that's what hit me when I was making the main channel tulpa video too. That really struck me as well, that people, if they're not careful when developing their tulpa, it can turn out wrong. Like the Peridot from Steven Universe tulpa that we talked about, where she came out limbless and screaming and wouldn't stop screaming. And this person was legitimately mentally like upset, like legitimately couldn't sleep or move on with their life. T was a huge issue for a couple years. The other two were fine despite Nil being terrifying to look at, but T was often mad and egging me to be angry too, encouraging me to solve things with arguments and physical confrontation, though thankfully that never really happened. There's something awful about being a teenager near tears with a guy leaning over you going, punch them. I can't do it for you, though. Took a long time for us to work through that one. All three of them are a little calmer now, but T is still aggressive. J is still socially awkward. Thankfully, none of them are at all interested in the whole possession thing, and none of us are even fully sold on it being possible to do that anyways. But yeah, that's how I got stuck with an aggressive Braun first idiot. You're using a lot of words. I think you're in the UK and you're using some slang that I have no idea what that means. I'm guessing brawn first idiot is a slang. And socially awkward, uncomedic doofus and an ominous black goo creature that wants to be my dad. I've got this clown posse until the day I die, but I could have been way worse, I guess. It is nice to have someone always around to talk to. And that was from Toby. Thank you so much, Toby. Was so fascinating. I really enjoyed your story. I am so curious to know, because you've said they've calmed down a little bit as you've gotten older, but that they're still with you. That's just so funny to me. And like, how did you create 3 of them? Wow. I'd be really curious to know how long it took, like how many days of forcing you did, especially as a kid, like kids without as much patience, you know, especially when you said you were like 10 or 11, like how you got focused on forcing enough to create these 3 things. But okay, thank you so much for your story. Like I said, I'm going to have more tulpa stories as we go on because I have asked for others and other people have sent me their tulpa stories as well. And they're very interesting. So, okay, moving on to story number 2 for today. This one goes, good afternoon, Hannah. I've been watching your channel for a while and one of the latest stories shared was of their grandfather being their guardian angel from part 3 of the Halloweeny Spectacular, and it jogged my memory of something similar when I was 4, about to go into kindergarten. I'm now 34, and this experience is the reason why I believe in ghosts. Please use the name Eli if you need to. Thank you, Eli. I just want to make a quick note. They said the Halloweeny Spectacular. I know that was from just a couple months ago. I just want other people to know if they sent their story in before that, don't freak out. I've said this on this channel before, but I don't go in order. I do kind of a roulette thing in my inbox. So I randomly scroll to a section of my inbox. There's over 900 emails in there. And I scroll to a random section and pick a story from that section and, you know, make sure it's appropriate for the channel and everything. But I try to pick them as randomly as possible so everybody has about an equal chance of getting picked. So just know if you sent one before then and you're like, oh, she's already in October, she's just skipping all those. No, I'm not. I just happened to pick this one from around that time. So just FYI for people, that's how the process goes. Okay, let's go into Eli's story. Here we go. They said that as well. I was very close with my grandpa. When my grandparents had my mom and all of her siblings, 6 total, he was working all the time to make enough money for them and my grandmother. Whenever he had a downtime, he would sleep as he was so exhausted. Thus, he didn't get to be present with them like he'd wanted to. By the time I was born, April 1990, he had been retired and I was the first grandchild he was able to care for personally. He stated that I was like the daughter he never got to enjoy to my mom since he worked night and day. While my parents were working and after my grandma passed, he'd take me everywhere with him. I remember being on his shoulders and picking pears from his backyard for a snack, rescuing me from the daycare nap time, and being allowed to sit in the front seat of his car in 1993. Oh, naughty grandpa. Prior to this, he'd already beaten kidney cancer, having the mass and kidney removed, and was told that they'd gotten everything and that he was a free man. Unbeknownst to anyone, it had metastasized to his lungs 2 years later. The prognosis wasn't good, and the doctor said, go home and enjoy the rest of your time. Ugh, that's heartbreaking. That's probably the scariest sentence that anybody ever hears. He refused, saying that he had so much to live for still. He wanted to move forward with chemo, saying that he wasn't ready to quit and wanted to see me off to my first day of kindergarten in September of 1994. During his treatment, he moved into my parents' house for them to help. I had a few more months with him, and we got up to a lot of silly shenanigans, including letting me attempt to shave his beard and assisting the hospice nurse by listening to his heartbeat. The cancer was not controlled by the chemo, though, and he fell into a coma in August of 94. Mom told me that he could still hear us and that talking to him would be good. So I put on my best dress and came to him that day, not fully understanding what was happening. The next morning when I woke up, my door was closed, which it never was as a child, as I like to pull disappearing acts. The first thing I said to my mom was, "Grandpa's gone," which unnerved her as he had passed in the night. The day of the funeral, I sang to him again in the casket and kissed his cheek as I squirreled away a drawing in his suit pocket. Oh, I think earlier... Oops. Okay, sorry. Correction. I said, so I put on my best dress and sang to him the last day, not fully understanding what was happening. I think that's what you meant because you said sang to him again later, and there was a typo there. So I think that's what they meant when they sang to him. Anyway, the day of the funeral, I sang to him again in the casket and kissed his cheek as I squirreled away a drawing in his suit pocket. I didn't understand that it was goodbye forever and comforted my cousins who sat crying further back in the room. Don't be sad. He'll now get to be the greatest grandpa in heaven, which just made them cry harder. Fast forwarding to the experience in September 94 and the first day of kindergarten. As I said before, I was a very precocious child and enjoyed exploring on my own quite often. I got in trouble at the daycare constantly as I refused to nap, which is why I saw it as Grandpa saving me from daycare, LOL, and would attempt to escape the building. Like with daycare, I snuck off from the rest of my class and hid behind a set of lockers and was making my way to the gymnasium. As I opened the door, a man was standing in front of me. It took me a second, but I recognized him. It was my grandpa. Excitedly, I asked him what he was doing there, and he told me that he was a janitor. He steered me out of the gym and back into the hall as the door closed behind us. He told me that I shouldn't run off like that and that I needed to get back to my class or that they'd be worried. He looked very endeared as he was holding my hand and guiding me back to class. Happily, I obliged after making him promise to see me again, hugged him, and ran back to class. For weeks, I would tell my classmates and moms that Grandpa was a janitor at the school, but could never find him. I even asked one of the other janitors, who was an older gentleman, if they'd seen him, and they were confused and stated that he was the only janitor. At the time, it was a very small school with the class sizes no bigger than 20 for each grade. As an adult now, I realize that he kept his promise for seeing me off to school, even if it wasn't how he intended it. It's bittersweet but heartwarming knowing of the possibility that he was still there to care for me. Have a great Halloween and enjoy your spooky season, Eli. Thank you, Eli. Oh my God, that was so sweet. I am somebody who doesn't have any grandparents left either. All 4 of my grandparents died. I think the last one passed away in 2018 or somewhere around that 2017 or 2018. These kind of stories connect with me because of that. Both of my parents are the babies of their family, which I think explains why my grandparents are gone, because they were the youngest. So they had us when my grandparents were way older. So my other cousins got a lot more time with them, basically, is what I'm saying. And so I think about that all the time, that I definitely took them for granted. When you're a teenager, you know, I went through phases and stuff, and I was like mean to my grandparents at sometimes, or I just didn't like them that much and all that. And I just really regret that. as an adult now, I wish I still had at least one of them in my life. One of them I didn't know at all, but like wish I had one of them in my life that I could just spend time with and talk to and stuff. I started to do that in my 20s a little bit. I didn't see them enough, or they passed away before then. So this story is a good reminder for everybody. If you have grandparents out there, whenever you see them, even if you see them a lot, or if you only see them every now and then, tell them how much you love them and how much you cherish time with them. And also, like, even if they seem so uncool and you're, a younger person and you're in college or whatever, like, just remember that they're not going to be around forever, and that their grandparents are hopefully, assuming they're good people, obviously don't spend time with people that aren't good to you. But if they're good people and loving grandparents, then, just give them a hug for me, right? Like, that's all I'm saying. And for Eli too, I would imagine. Eli, I loved your story. I'm so glad that he came back and visited you, and the fact that he came to your kindergarten too. I will also say, fun story, I worked in daycare. I've worked in many jobs. I've had many lives, and I used to work at a daycare for the toddlers, and I will tell you, Eli, were the type of kid that drove us nuts, because nap time was the one time of day that the teachers got to like write all our notes. Not that I was a teacher. They called us teachers because it was, stupid and prestigious. But that was like the one time a day we got to like actually write all the notes for the parents and do our paperwork and like clean up from lunch and like get ready for the second half of the day. And there was always one kid that would never fucking sleep. And it was so hard because they would be waking up their friends. They would wake up other kids really early. And then you had to watch them when you were trying to get stuff done. And it's just, there is just a particular kind of kid that will refuse to nap during nap time, even if they're tired. And then they're grumpy the rest of the day because they're tired. So that's just a more lighthearted way to end that story that you just reminded me. Unlocked a memory there. But anyway, okay, moving on. Thank you so much for your story, Eli. I really appreciate it. I'm so sorry for your loss. You've healed since then, probably, since that was decades ago, but I'm still sorry for your loss. Still, it sounds like it was a lot for such a little person to understand. So, okay, this next story is way shorter. This one starts, "Hey Hannah, I wanted to share with you the closest thing I have had to a paranormal story from my youth. When I was a kid, it was well known by family and friends that my house was haunted. I've never experienced anything paranormal there, but everyone in my family had a strange story of weird happenings and sightings. There's an old church directly behind my house, and our backyard shared a fence with a graveyard, so it made sense to me as a child that my house would be haunted. Even friends and family who would visit from out of town would tell stories of how they heard a noise in the kitchen in the middle of the night and went to check, but no one was there. They would find the sink running or things out of place with no sign of anyone having entered the room. Years later, I put together that I was the family ghost all along." I've been sleepwalking since a very young age, but didn't know it, and my family didn't know it either. I would often walk into the kitchen or bathroom, turn on the sink, and leave. I only figured this out when my sister caught me in the act. My mom still insists that I couldn't have been the ghost, but it's funny to think that I have memories of doing the things the ghost was accused of doing. And that was from Tabitha. Oh my gosh. That is so funny. That is like one of my most irrational fears, actually, is being an undiagnosed sleepwalker, especially because I've lived alone for so long. I'm so scared that I like sleepwalk and I don't even know it, even though there's been no evidence of that. I've never woken up in a weird place, but it does scare the crap out of me. But that is so funny and explains so much why they all had weird things happen, but you never did. And then it turns out that was you. What a great little story. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Everybody get checked for sleepwalking if you think you have a ghost, or if you think your house is haunted. Maybe it's just one of your family members sleepwalking. Okay, the next story for today goes, "Hi Hannah, I love your videos. I had no idea that this channel existed until recently when a video popped up as a recommended, and now I have a whole host of new videos to listen to while I game or write. I couldn't choose between these two stories, so I included both. I'll try to make them as short as I can. I am known for making every story I tell very long-winded, like a grandma," my sister says. Don't worry, that's me too, if you guys haven't noticed. I am often, I don't think you guys understand how much I cut out of my videos often. These videos are a little bit better because I'm reading your stories, but anyway, okay. The first one goes back to when I was a kidlet. A friend of mine was celebrating her birthday at a roller skating rink. I don't remember how old she was turning, but I'd say maybe 7 or 8. I can barely balance on my feet, let alone on wheels, but I was thrilled to go and have fun with my friends. Very soon after this horde of girls was dropped off at the rink and sorted with skates, her parents must have let us know that they were going to go pick up a birthday cake. I just know that the events of the story happened between them leaving and then coming back. As I mentioned, I cannot balance on wheels. I waddled onto the rink, probably slipped as I grabbed onto the handrail, and I relied on that handrail heavily as a guide for the whole day. I didn't mind. I was having my own fun. My friends could all skate in varying degrees of success, and they made sure to come by to hang out with me as I dragged myself around the skating rink. I know exactly what you're talking about. I used to go to these rinks all the time, even like up to high school, and I just did it last year. One of my friends had a birthday party. She rented out, adult money is fun. She rented out an entire rink for a few hours, so we got the whole place to ourselves, and we got to do like roller skating, karaoke and stuff, and it was so fun. I cannot roller skate to save my life, but I can rollerblade, and it's really interesting because as a kid I would go rollerblading all the time, and I learned how to rollerblade from a really young age, and it's like riding a bike. Whichever one you learn as a kid is like riding a bike. So if you roller skated as a kid a lot, you're going to be able to skate as an adult pretty easily without much fine tuning. And if you rollerbladed as a kid, it comes right back to you. I hadn't rollerbladed in years. And last year when we went, they only had skates. And so I tried the skates, couldn't do it. My friend had an extra pair of blades that they brought, and oh, bless her for Rachel. Thank you so much if you ever watch this, because that made my day. And I got in those blades and immediately I was just whoosh and just took off like a bird into the wind. And seriously, it is like riding a bike. So just saying, tip for anybody out there, if you have an event where you're going to go roller skating or rollerblading, try to remember which one you did as a kid. If you did do one of them as a kid, that same one is going to be way easier as an adult and will come right back to you. The brain is very interesting like that. My friend Zach, on the other hand, he has been learning how to rollerblade. He never did it as a kid. And so he bought rollerblades and has been like taking classes and stuff like leading up to this event. And he still had a really hard time, but he was still pretty good considering, but it's like really hard to learn it as a fresh skill. It's so interesting. So, okay. Sorry for the tangent. A man approached me and asked me if I needed help. I declined, and he said that he worked at the rink and was an instructor. I still said no, and he skated off. I noticed that he didn't offer anybody else help, but then a friend came over and asked me who the man was. I told her I didn't know, just some guy who works here, and she skated off. Not long later, he skates back over to me, says that he'll teach me so I can have fun too, and I declined his offer once again. He lingered even after I said no. Then again, skated off. He approached me multiple times, every time offering to help me learn to skate, and every time I said no. Good for you. A 7 or 8-year-old kid? What the hell? That's so creepy. I'm pretty sure that even if he did work there, you wouldn't just do that without like talking to the parents first. That's weird. It wasn't until he came over and from behind tried to take my hand off the rail so that I'd have no support except for him that I became concerned. Thankfully, as I clung to the rail, 2 of my friends came over and said, "We're going to skate in a big line. Come with us." And he skated away really quickly. I'm pretty sure they noticed what was going on because we didn't skate in a line or as a group at all. It was just a ruse to get him to leave. Oh my God, that's nice of your friend, especially so young that they were able to tune into that. But he wasn't done. He finally skated over one last time, but this time he wasn't alone. He'd brought a woman with him, and I remember them both smiling creepily at me as he told me that she was his wife, and maybe I'd feel more comfortable skating with a woman instead. That's when kid me realized something wasn't right, and I was stuck on a skating rink with these strangers who I now didn't believe worked there at all, and the exit off the rink was ages away. He grabbed an arm and looped it in his, and the woman started prying my hand off the rail. With perfect timing, my friend Kay skated over with me excitedly and said that S's mom is back with the cake. She grabbed my arm and we left the rink. I paid no attention to the strangers, just ripped my skate offs and ran with Kay to the tables where we were all gathering. I found the whole situation strange, but then then, the realization that they assumed I was alone creeped me out for years ever since, especially since I saw them through the window running across the parking lot and into a van. Girl, they were going to traffic you. I don't know if you're a girl. Girl is universal sometimes, and this is one of those statements. Girl, they were going to kidnap you. Even if they saw that you were at a birthday party, like, they still could have been trying to do this, but they obviously saw that you were the most vulnerable one because you weren't as skilled at skating. So they had an excuse to come up to you because they could be like, oh, we just want to help you skate. We just want to help you learn so that you can have fun with your friends. So first of all, they saw that. And second of all, you were more isolated from your friends because you were on the rail so much and using the rail to skate. So this definitely seems like, I don't know what else this would be, either a kidnapping or a human trafficking situation that you seem to judge, especially running across the lot into a van afterwards. That is so creepy. Okay. Oh my gosh. Let's move on to your second story. And your second story says that this one is more spooky. I've included a crappy diagram so that you can visualize what happened and how. My dad died when I was 18. We never had a bond all throughout my childhood and only started to connect when I was 17. So it sucked that I had such a little time to get to know him, but I also didn't feel much grief or anything when he died. Mom, understandably, was devastated. Dad liked keeping things he didn't need to. Not quite hoarder degree, but if it wasn't for Mom, he very well may have been. She had asked me if I would deal with his computer because she had no idea about PCs, and in her eyes, I'm a tech guru. It was completely riddled with viruses from downloading movies from LimeWare, and he was in the process of trying to fix it before he died. I decided that there was no point in salvaging anything, and instead I chose to take it apart and bin the hard drives. I took it to the workbenches outside, and before I started, I jokingly said out loud, "Sorry, Dad," as I knew if he'd been alive, he would have been spewing. After taking everything apart, I bought the hard drives inside and placed them on top of the kitchen bin, which had a slightly angled lid, but not angled enough that you couldn't set something on top. I grabbed some money from my mom's bag and called to her saying that I had taken some money and I was going to walk down the nearby shops to get some chocolate milk, and asked if she wanted anything. I walked to the front door while I waited for her answer when suddenly a massive bang came from behind me, right behind me. I turned around and the 2 hard drives were on the floor, almost touching my feet. My blood ran cold and my mom poked her head out of her room to ask if I was okay and what had happened. I told her all I knew, that somehow the hard drives had fallen 1.5 meters all around a small corner. We conducted a series of tests to figure out if it would be possible for the hard drives to land where they did, let alone even fall off the bin. Even the hardest push we could manage would only land them just off the bin. There was no possible way that they could have traveled from any further than about 20 centimeters, if lucky. I told her how I jokingly apologized to Dad before taking his computer apart. She laughed and said, "Guess he's not happy with you," and he went back to her room. I guess maybe he wasn't, but he didn't need to throw something so heavy at me. Thank you for taking the time to read these silly little stories, and I hope you enjoyed them. If you read them in a video, I hope everyone listening enjoys them too. I could tell so many weird stories, some courtesy of my sister, but I'll save those for another day. I look forward to more videos and everyone else's creepy tales. Cheers from down under, and that was just, all we know is that's from T. You must be from Australia, calling your mom mum. We just say mom here in the US, and also from down under. So thank you for writing all the way from Australia. That's nice. Maybe your dad was just pissed because he wanted those movies in the afterlife. Maybe that's all he wanted. And he was like, hey, you destroyed them. Oh my gosh. Oh, dads, what would we do without them? Well, we wouldn't exist, but okay. This is the last story for today. This is another shorter story, but there is a little video clip attached with some sound that we can analyze. So I'm not a very good storyteller, so please forgive me, LOL. Over the last summer, 2023, I was in Austin, Texas for about the first half of July. I was staying at a Hilton location for my stay and then had something happen on my third night. It was around midnight and I suddenly heard scratching on the wall in the bathroom, even though I was at the very end of the hall. Still, I figured there must be a maid's closet or maybe a suite that goes behind my room. But the scratches kept happening on and off for like 15 minutes, even after me knocking on the wall back. I then decided to call hotel security to see what the noise was and took this video to show them proof of what I heard. Security came up and I showed the guy the video and he was equally as confused as me, and he said there was no room next to me that would go back that far, and the only thing he could think of was maybe outside the windows were getting cleaned, and so he said he'd double check and call back. He called back about 15 minutes later and sounded so stumped, saying, no workers here. I am just as confused as you are. And then he asked if I wanted to move rooms, and I said no, that it was fine. And I was just concerned that maybe someone needed help. I took this video but never uploaded online anywhere just because you can't see my other hand, and I know people will be like, why didn't you film your other hand? The only reason I took the video was for the purpose of showing the hotel security, since it was happening on and off every few minutes, and I wanted to show what I was hearing just in case it stopped by then, which it did. You'll have to take my word for that. Oh, and by the way, I was on the 21st floor. Here's the video. Is the 21st floor significant? I don't think it's significant. I don't think it's like floor 13 or anything. I think this person is just saying that they were really, really high up. I'm going to have Taylor put in the clip right here and play it a couple times for you so you can hear the scratching in the video. So when I listen to this, I would bet so much money that this is rats in the wall. I know you said you're on the 21st floor, so that does sound really unlikely, but it can't be impossible. And I just think that this sounds like rats because now we've talked about this before, but I used to babysit for my friend's dogs, and she lives kind of not off the beaten path. There's houses really close, but there is like woods right behind her house. And one time I was staying there and I got the absolute shit scared out of me because I would wake up in the morning to scratching in the walls. And I texted her and was like, hello, what the fuck is this? And she was like, yeah, we have a squirrel. Or a rat, we don't know which, but they're sneaky little buggers. They can find tiny little holes in your roof, and they can go down into the roof and into the walls and build a nest there. So the AI overview and Google, a very rough search, says, yes, rodents can get into the walls of higher story buildings as they're excellent climbers and can easily access upper levels through small cracks, gaps around pipes, or other openings in walls, even on high floors. And then this one also says, yes, mice can climb walls, and they're actually pretty good at it too. Since they have small bodies and dexterous limbs, it's a lot easier for them to pull themselves up walls and other inclines. And then additionally, as somebody who owns pet rats, you guys know that I have 2 pet rats, Reptar and Chucky, and they are huge, but any rat owner will tell you rats are liquid. That's what we say. Like, rats are literally liquid substance. Especially when they're babies, their cage can't have gaps more than a half an inch, because even an inch gap or anything bigger than a half an inch, a rat can squeeze through. And so I would just bet so much money that this was a rodent of some kind that squeezed into the building and has climbing up the walls and got all the way to that floor and probably had a nest behind the walls in your room, which is not great to think about. People think that just because I do like wild rats too. I like all rats. I love all rodents in general. Domestic rats are clean, and they are also very different. I often say this to help people conceptualize why they're so different. Domestic fancy pet rats are to sewer rats, wild rats, the way that wolves are to dogs. Like, they are the same species technically, but they are so vastly different. Like, my rats would not survive out in the wild. If I just released them, they would not survive very long. They are not equipped to survive. They live the fancy life. They live in a nice, warm, giant cage that takes up half the room, and they have love and treats and tons of stuff at them, right? So where was I going with this? I just keep talking. People think that just because I was saying why it's scary. People think this is what I'm talking about. I could be long-winded too. People think that just because I like domesticated fancy rats means that I would go up to a sewer rat or a wild rat and be like, hello, little guy. I wouldn't hurt them. I think they're cute and fascinating still. I would leave them alone, and I would definitely not kill them. If I had an infestation, I would remove them ethically because I really like rodents, but that doesn't mean that I would like pet a wild rat because they are not domesticated, they would bite. So that's why I'm saying, like, it's still a little jarring, even if you are a rodent person, to have a rodent in the walls. But it just sounds so much like that. The stopping and starting too, because that would also happen when I stayed at my friend's house and there was a rodent in the walls. I am talking so long about this. I'm so sorry. And that would happen too. It would stop for hours because it would go to a different spot, or it would only be scratching to make a bed or like get nesting materials or do something for probably the babies that it had in there. And then it would stop for a few hours and then it would come back. And it's very possible that it left, you know, it went to another section of the building for the rest of your stay and didn't come back till later. So that is my best guess, is that they had some sort of infestation. It would also make sense that the worker wouldn't tell you that they suspected that because they wouldn't want to freak a guest out. They're not going to want to admit to a guest that there might be a rat infestation because they don't know how guests will react. To me, that wouldn't freak me out. I mean, it would be jarring, but it wouldn't freak me out. Like, I wouldn't panic. But to some people, they would panic. Just like if a hotel has had bed bugs in the past and they don't anymore, they're not going to lead with that. You know, if you find a bed bug in your room and you rightfully request a new room because of that, they're not going to be like, oh yeah, we've had this problem. You know what I mean? They're going to be like, oh my God, that's never happened before. I'm so sorry. I can't believe that. We're going to call people right away, and they move you to another room with no bed bugs. You know, they're not going to be very forthcoming about that because they don't want to freak out the guests, especially a Hilton. They want their rooms to look good. So that's a very long-winded way of saying that that's what I think it is. I wasn't there, so if something else happened, or if you suspect that I'm wrong in my explanation, I'm happy to be wrong. But yeah, that's my take. Okay, I'm going to shut up now. That's all that we have for today. Thank you guys. Please like the video if you enjoyed it. Don't forget, I'm wearing our merch. How cool is our merch? If you guys are only on this channel and not on the main channel, we have our Camping Cryptids merch. It's a one-of-a-kind art piece that I made with my graphic designer friend Tim. If you want that, it's linked down below in the description box, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Okay, bye.